we keep having this messaging coming out of these agencies, especially during the Biden-Harris administration, that, you know, there's nothing to see here. With regards to FEMA, they are being now presented with evidence that they were treating people differently based on their partisan views. That is an incredible discovery in the United States of America. And so, of course, you're going to have an investigation. We're not going to wait.
Well, FEMA insisting that the case of an agency supervisor telling relief workers to avoid Trump campaign signs at homes during disaster response is an isolated incident. Let's bring in the FEMA official who was fired over the incident but claims she has been made a scapegoat. Marnie Washington. Marnie, thank you so much for coming on. I want to read this because this is from the FEMA administrator, Deanne Criswell. She said this, and she's talking about you. She said, quoting here, recently, a FEMA employee departed from these values to advise her survivor assistance team to not go to homes with yard signs supporting President-elect Trump. This was reprehensible. I want to be clear to all of my employees and the American people, this type of behavior and action will not be tolerated at FEMA. You say this is not your policy. You're not political. You don't care about the right or the left. You are simply doing your job and following your orders. So you're telling me these orders came from somebody above?
Correct. When I first reported to Florida, I was already on another team. I was there as a specialist. This was the culture. They were already avoiding these homes based on community trends from hostile political encounters. It has nothing to do with the campaign sign. It just so happened to be part of the community trend. When you focus in on the campaign sign, you are violating the Hatch Act. So that is something that FEMA definitely wants to stay away from because it was created in 1939, and that was to protect citizens from being alienated based on their political stance.
So just so we're clear, you're saying that basically FEMA was doing this out of safety. They were doing that safe because they had some adversarial conflicts with some people with Trump signs in their front yards. So they banned every Trump sign. They said, don't go to any homes with Trump signs. And if that's the case, why would they come down so hard on you? Why are you the scapegoat? Why are you the one they're saying was, quote, reprehensible for actually putting this in place when you did not put this in place?
What's reprehensible is they're not being transparent. Why is this coming down on me? I am the person that jotted down the notes from my superiors, and my notation in Teams chat was exposed from their surge capacity team. That's exactly what happened, and it's easy to then say, well, haha, it's her name, it's her writing.
Right.
Make her accountable for it. But I'm just simply executing, again, what was coming down from my superiors.
Right. And I'm wondering, because it says things like when on this list that says avoid the Trump houses, drink water, take rest breaks. So there's a list of things. You didn't come up with those either, right?
No.
So you didn't come up with any of this list. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, sir.
And I'm wondering, how do you prove that, Marnie? You're trying to save your reputation. How do you prove that this order came from above?
Well, the last time that question was posed, I verbally called on all DSA crew leads and specialists that are still active with FEMA and former to come forward and discuss our avoidance policies, our de-escalation policies. Because, to be honest with you, we don't just I know the highlight here is the Trump campaign signage, but if someone is in another, like an urban community, and it's a different culture and someone feels uncomfortable, we can't go to that home. If you have loose dogs and someone on the team is comfortable with dogs and another person is not, we can't go to that home because of safety precautions. So
you feared the Trump houses. The people on FEMA were fearing the Trump houses like they were fearing people with vicious dogs in their backyard.
Exactly. And that's based on the trends. You can ask FEMA for incident reports. They have those because they ask us to report out if there's an incident at home. And unfortunately, again, the passionate supporters for Trump, some of them were a little bit violent.
But all of them were painted with the same broad brush. All of them as being, we're not going to go near these because we think they're all bad people.
No, because some were registered. Some did receive case inquiries and updates. Yeah. Some of them came outside and said, hi, I appreciate what you're doing. I would like to participate. And then some were very vocal and firm that they didn't want anything to do with FEMA, and they thought that we were crooks.
And lastly, we've got to go. We're running out of time here. Did this also happen in other places? This was Florida, but did it happen in North Carolina? Did it happen in other places?
Georgia as well. Just ask the crew leads and the specialists. They will discuss their avoidance and their de-escalation methods in the field. Okay. And I think Ms. Criswell would be happy to know what's going on, truly.
Marnie, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, John, while President-elect Trump is promising to ramp up deportations of illegal migrants, Massachusetts Democratic Governor Maura Healey says her state is not going to help. So how will this affect local communities? It's a huge question right now. Joining us is Stephanie Mulroy. She's a lifelong Massachusetts resident and is raising 4 children in that state. Thank you very much for your time. So, yes, it's been a clear message of his campaign and now President-elect Trump that he will deport these illegal migrant criminals. How does someone like you feel about that, and what do you want to see happen?
Thank you so much. Yes, I have been a resident of Massachusetts my entire life. I'm raising 4 school-age children here and over 30 nieces and nephews, and I have to tell you, I'm worried. I'm worried about our kids. I'm worried about their safety, but I'm also not without compassion. We here in Massachusetts have been a Commonwealth that has been diverse since the 80s, when I remember going to school, full of non-English speaking students. But our right to shelter law that was created in the 80s has been abused and misinterpreted by Maura Healey during the entire course of her administration, so much so that she has created the Commonwealth to become basically a magnet for criminals from all over our country. Just recently, there was an illegal immigrant who was caught and released in Arizona and then picked up here on the streets of Boston after committing heinous sexual crimes against a child. ICE was looking to detain this criminal, but the courts under the Healey administration were forced to let him go. Thankfully, that individual was picked up by the Boston PD, but that's just one person out of thousands that are wandering our streets and in our schools and in our hotels and in shelters across this state. Parents can't just let their children walk downtown to go get a soda without wondering who might be intercepting them on the way. It's terrifying. And it's also speaking to the fact that this administration here in Massachusetts, Governor Maura Healey, clearly does not care what the voters want to see happen here in Massachusetts. We spoke during the last election. Almost every community in Massachusetts went more right than they've ever been before. And it looks like Maura Healey is doubling down on just completely rejecting the will of the residents of Massachusetts.
Well, speaking of which, here is the governor in her own words. This was on Wednesday. Listen.
If the Trump administration requests it, would the Massachusetts State Police assist in mass deportations?
No, absolutely not. Every tool in the toolbox has got to be used to protect our citizens, to protect our residents, and protect our states, and certainly to hold the line on democracy and the rule of law.
No, absolutely not. If the Trump administration requested Massachusetts State Police assist in these mass deportations. Final thought from you.
Yeah, I think that she's absolutely hypocritical. She's relying on emotional appeals to people and not taking into account the facts. The facts are that we have a housing crisis here in Massachusetts, which she seems to be very vocal about, but makes no means or no motions to actually deport or remove the people that are using our right to shelter law in an abusive way so that young moms, homeless people, veterans aren't able to use the resources that we have here in Massachusetts and that we have in place for our residents. The criminality of these illegals that are all over the place here and in a lot of our detainment facilities, and then being completely released without any involving of ICE. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I'm working with Amy Carnevale and the Mass GOP to try to get another governor lined up for the next election. And I have to say to Maura Healey, thank you. You're doing a great job because you're turning this state more and more purple every day.
As a mother of 4, we hear the concern, obviously, in your voice. And we know this is also costing taxpayers a lot of money. The cost of illegal immigration in your state, according to the Federation for American Immigration Reform, There are 292,000 of them living in Massachusetts. There's almost 100,000 students in local schools. This is costing Massachusetts households about $1,000, over $1,000 per household. We thank you for joining us very much, Stephanie. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
All right, John.
Senior correspondent Mike Tobin has the details. What charges is he facing so far, Mike?
Well, there's one count of offering material support to a terrorist organization, specifically ISIS. And we're getting the information really fast here right now, specifically from Douglas Williams, the FBI special agent in charge, who called this a great day because a terrorist suspect has been taken off the streets of Houston. And this is a 28-year-old Anas Saeed who had been on the FBI's radar since 2017. They'd interviewed him multiple times, but Williams said after October 7th, he was inspired by that attack and his behavior trended toward violence. He jumped to what Williams said was the top of their list of national security threats. And so the decision was made last Friday, according to U.S. Attorney Alamdar Hamdani, to go ahead and arrest him. Here's Hamdani.
Now, the agents directed Mr. Saeed several times to put his hands up, but he ignored their commands and violently threw an object from his hand to the ground. Continuing to ignore commands, the defendant once again reached for an object and appeared to smash it on the ground. Agents later determined the object he smashed was his cell phone.
The cell phone is particularly relevant because a lot of the evidence they're talking about thus far really seems to be communication and pro-ISIS propaganda. A lot of images that were shared, coordinated with a web designer apparently affiliated with ISIS. He expressed a desire to attack overseas. He expressed a desire to attack domestically, according to the FBI. Talked about using the explosive belts, which is interesting because that kind of throws us back to the sort of attacks we saw with the second Palestinian Intifada. So, again, the charge is one count of offering material support. Detention hearing is today. Jillian.
Well, it seems like a lot of these would-be terrorists are often inclined to very stupidly share a lot of their thinking and planning online with other people. Mike Tobin, thanks for bringing us those details.
Got it.
All right, well, Chicago resident Katja Truss has sued Chicago over its handling or mishandling of the migrant crisis. She joins us now. Katja, thanks so much for taking time with us. I want to get first your reaction to Mayor Brandon Johnson's comments about illegal immigration. What he seems to be saying, essentially, is he's going to continue to protect illegal immigrants in the city from federal agents, despite the law, despite the incoming agenda of the Trump administration. What do you say about that?
Well, what we're seeing is here in the state of Illinois, you're seeing with Mayor Brandon Johnson as well as Governor Pritzker that they're going to dig their heels in because both of them are having trouble reading the room. Both of them are having trouble looking at the voter turnout, looking at the numbers of people who voted Republican. And not all of those people voted Republican because they were supporters of President Trump. A lot of them voted Republican simply because they did not like these policies that the Democratic Party is pushing. And so I think that instead of digging their heels in, especially in the midst of the budget crisis that we're in here in both the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois, I think that the mayor as well as Governor Pritzker really need to sit down and be quiet and take a back seat because you have to think about this. Funding for the police department essentially has come from the federal government, and we cannot afford to not be in President Trump's good graces with the financial situation that we're in this city. And so to dig his heels in, if anybody is hurting black families and residents of the city of Chicago, it is Mayor Brandon Johnson.
Now, I want to check in with you. I know that you have a lawsuit that you brought against the city, accusing them of mishandling the migrant crisis to the detriment of, everybody who lives there. Can you tell us the status of it, where it is today, and what you're hoping to achieve?
Well, what basically happened was we got a stay from the court, and what the judge told the city of Chicago, as well as the residents of the Austin community, is that as long as the mayor and his administration did not bring the migrants into our park, then they would not move to make a judgment. So with him finding somewhere else to send the migrants, we were able to avert having to go into a long court battle.
So now President-elect Trump says that illegal immigration in American cities across the nation is something he's going to be focusing on from day one in the Oval Office. What would you like to see as a first move coming out of the Trump administration?
One of the things that I want to see as a first move is for him to send Mr. Holman to the city of Chicago, to the state of Illinois, and remember that, you know, we like to call them migrants, but at the end of the day, they are illegal immigrants. They are here illegally. And if you want to be in this country, if you want to be in this city, then I think that you have to go through the proper channels to be here the way that you're supposed to be here. And if you're not here the way that you're supposed to be here legally, then I think that Mr. Holman has every right to come into the city of Chicago, into the state of Illinois, and all of these sanctuary cities where these people are being housed. And let me just tell you something else that people fail to understand, is that when you are a sanctuary city, all it means is that there's some protection from ICE. It does not mean that we have to financially support and house these people when they come here and put our city in the budget deficit that we're in right now. And so the citizens of Chicago are not happy about that, especially when you're asking taxpayers to pay more money for less services when our communities are still blighted and disinvested in. And you have a mayor who's saying, hey, listen, I'm here and I'm fighting for the people. Right now, everything that we have seems to be going to the migrants. You have our mayor who pushed for the Chicago Teachers Union to wrap funding for migrant students. They want to give migrant students a $2,000 per month stipend, not all students who may be suffering or standing in need, but just migrant students. What in the world does that have to do with education and funding teachers? You tell me.
Well, Kata, we wish you all the best going forward with the suit, with the issue. We hope that you'll stay in touch with us and come back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.